It has been over
452 days
since Apple released the new 14-inch MacBook Pro. That's a long time, so this new MacBook Pro is actually kind of old. But listen, I've been using this Mac almost daily since its release, and it's not too often we get to take such a long look at a product. And out of all of Apple's products, this one might be one of the most important ones to do a long-term review on, not only because Apple is still selling it, but because people hold onto their laptops longer than other tech devices, and we can probably expect the design and overall feature set of this MacBook Pro to stay with us at least for the next 4 years. So even if you're watching this at a later date, it's quite possible this video will still be relevant. So in this video, I want to go over not only how I use my 14-inch MacBook Pro, but also want to update you on the longevity of this device, how it's held up in terms of durability, battery life, and overall value. And I want to talk to you about how the M1 Max chip has aged and if I actually regret buying this laptop. Now, when I first purchased this MacBook, I bought it with the intention that it was going to be the only Mac that I was going to use, and I was going to use this as a complete replacement for my desktop iMac and my M1 MacBook Pro. So to do that, it had to fulfill a few roles. First of all, I wanted to spec it out so it would last a very long time, and I didn't want to be buying a new MacBook replacement for at least the next 3 years. So it had to be powerful enough to stand up to other Mac desktops, and I wanted it to be as portable as possible without sacrificing on performance. So naturally, I settled on this 14-inch model because to me, this represented what I thought was the clearest breakthrough for Apple Silicon. For the first time, I was able to spec out the smaller Pro laptop with identical specifications to the 16-inch model, and I did just that, equipping this with the M1 Max chip with the 32 GPU cores, 64 gigabytes of memory, and 4 terabytes of storage. And yes, after I ordered this, I did eventually come to learn that there was a very slight performance advantage on the 16-inch MacBook Pro thanks to its slightly better cooling performance. I was still happy to give up that little bit of extra performance for the compact form factor of the 14-inch. The 14-inch is a dream to travel with for a Pro laptop with these specs. It's 3.5 pounds, which is a good weight for the power I get out of it, and the smaller size means it's much easier to fit into the laptop compartment of several bags that I own, or even bags that aren't really meant to fit a laptop. And this MacBook has slipped in and out of bags. I've been taking it from my home to my studio to coffee shops to hotels to airports, and it even fits on the tray table of my airplane, something that probably wouldn't work as well with the bigger 16-inch model. It is well traveled, although you really wouldn't know it looking at the silver aluminum exterior. For over a year, the durability of this MacBook has held up really well. I cannot find a scratch or a scuff mark on this, and it kind of looks like it does when I first took it out of the box, except for all the fingerprint smudges everywhere from when I don't clean it. This thing looks practically brand new. From a durability standpoint, this laptop has held up extremely well. Like, it makes me wonder if I wasted money getting AppleCare Plus on this device. Now, how I use my MacBook is mostly the same no matter where I am. First and foremost, it is a machine that I use to run this channel. So that usually means editing video in Final Cut Pro, which this machine has mostly handled very well. It's very smooth for what I want to use it for. So if I edit 4K footage, color grade, audio edit, multiple 4K layers in a timeline, the MacBook Pro holds up really well. The render times are incredibly fast, and export times are ridiculously speedy. The expanded port selection has also been great here too. The addition of the SD card slot means I can travel without any adapters, and I'm easily able to take SD cards straight from my camera and then import that footage directly into the MacBook while still having 3 high-speed Thunderbolt ports available for connecting things like external SSD drives, and then having a dedicated MagSafe port to charge my laptop. The one port that really hasn't done much for me is the HDMI port. Like, I've used it a few times since owning this laptop, but I guess that's kind of the point, right? It might not be something that I'm constantly using, but for the times that I needed it and it was there, I was glad that it was on the laptop. Now, video editing isn't the only thing I do on my laptop. It's probably what I do the most on my laptop, but I do a fair bit of other things as well. So editing photos in apps like Affinity Photo or Photoshop, writing scripts in Bare Notes, filling out PDFs, and emailing clients. But it also has been used for some downtime too. So I've watched a lot of YouTube and other streaming services with this beautiful mini LED display, which HDR content on it just looks so great. and I've even clocked in a few rounds of StarCraft 2, which runs decently thanks to the extra headroom of the M1 Max chip. This is also accompanied with some great sounding speakers that makes this laptop just a great entertainment laptop overall if you really don't even need the professional power. And with some of the price cuts we've seen recently, or I guess they're not official price cuts, they're like price cuts from third parties, that has actually made me reconsider this, not as just a professional device, but for people who just want a really good laptop as well. But let me touch back a bit on performance. I gave it like a glowing review, but I want to say it is not perfect. Like most Macs I've owned, there have been an occasional few hiccups, but those do seem mostly software related. So apps like Final Cut Pro can sometimes become unresponsive and require me to like force quit them. And there's been a few times where I actually maxed out the 64 gigabytes of memory on my machine. Although to be fair, I do tend to keep a lot of browser tabs open and multiple professional apps open at once. Hardware-wise, I would say the biggest hangup I actually have on this machine has nothing to do with the performance, but it's actually the storage. Yeah, I thought I was being forward-looking by getting a laptop with 4 terabytes of storage, but alas, working with video files constantly, at least 4K video files, and then rendering them in Final Cut means I have filled up my 4 terabyte drive multiple times since owning this laptop, and I've had to delete a lot of video files off of this laptop or store them on other external solid-state drives. And I would say that is like one of my biggest regrets with this laptop. It's the storage. Like I actually felt like I spent too little on it, and if I could go back and do it over again, I would have opted to get the 8 terabyte model because I really do like having a lot of storage in a laptop. This is the most storage I've ever owned in a laptop, and it's really freeing and not worrying when you don't have to pack external storage drives when you're storing multiple video projects. That might just be me. I know a lot of people like to save money, go for the 512 gigabyte option. They know they're eventually going to have to use external storage anyway, so why not just get a cheaper external storage device? I mean, there's so many different options available that do come at pretty good price points. But for me, I just like traveling with just the laptop and nothing else, and having an extra 4 terabytes of storage with the 8 terabyte model. Yeah, I would have definitely done that if I could do it over again. But that would have added quite a lot of money to the price point because Apple charges way too much money for their storage options. Okay, I have talked a lot about how I've enjoyed this 14-inch model. It's been pretty glowing so far, right? But listen, there are times where I kind of wonder, did I make the right choice? And maybe this might have you reconsider what laptop you might actually want to get. Now, that mostly has to do with battery life. Now, don't get me wrong, this 14-inch MacBook Pro, the battery for it has mostly been fine. It was a big step up over my older 16-inch Intel MacBook Pro, as most of the Apple Silicon Macs are, and even the M1 Max chip in this smaller body runs very efficiently, and it rarely heats up or has the fan making any audible noise. However, there is a loss in overall battery life when you compare it to the M1 Pro models. The M1 Max chip is just that much more power hungry thanks to those additional GPU cores. Now, like I said, mostly I spend time editing video on this laptop, so that actually eats at the battery life a lot more than if you were just browsing the web in Safari or watching YouTube videos or videos stored locally on the device. So when I'm video editing in Final Cut Pro, when I first got this laptop, I would get around, I think, 5 to 6 hours of total work on this MacBook. And after a year of ownership, the battery life has started to kind of noticeably decline. I would say that when I'm using Final Cut now, my battery life is probably closer, and this isn't like an official measurement. I would say it's probably maybe an hour less, or maybe like an hour and a half less. I'm just gonna say like around maybe like 4 hours to 5 hours when editing in Final Cut Pro. And then just before recording this video, I actually looked at the battery health. I'm like, let me look at the battery health of this laptop and see like how much degradation has there been? Is this all in my head? And I don't think it is, because I looked at the battery health, and you can see after more than a year of ownership, the MacBook Pro's battery life the battery health is now at 92%. And yeah, batteries age. That's going to happen on any laptop you own. So this is one area where I kind of constantly go back and forth in my head, because I know the 16-inch model has bigger battery capacity and has that extra headroom in the battery life department, not only to handle the M1 Max chip a little bit better, but also it means that the battery is going to age even better over the long term. And that battery, if we were using it on the 16-inch model, would probably have more battery health, or even if it had the same battery health, it still just means because it has bigger battery capacity that it would still be able to keep a charge longer than this 14-inch model. So yes, there are times where I kind of side-eye the 16-inch model, wondering if that's the laptop I ultimately should have went with. But I think I got exactly what I signed up for. And if I had the 16-inch model, I think I would kind of be side-eyeing the 14-inch model for the reasons I listed before. This is the most powerful compact laptop that Apple has ever made, and while there are downsides to achieve that, the 14-inch does kind of have very little compromises for its size. And that's why I love it and respect it actually more than the bigger 16-inch model, because we should expect a big laptop with the max specs to run better at full performance. But this is the first time that I have really been blown away by the 14-inch model, because you can spec it out exactly the same as the 16-inch model, and you just were never able to do that on the older Intel MacBooks. So I would always, in those cases, get the larger size model. And yeah, like I said before, the 16-inch could eke out a bit more power thanks to its better cooling design, but I don't think that little bit of extra power is enough to justify the additional weight and size, at least for me. And while I'm sure the extra 2 inches of screen real estate is nice in some situations, I also think that my 14-inch has paired beautifully with Apple Studio Display. The one I have at home wasn't available when I first purchased my laptop. Now when I'm home, I can get the full benefits of a big display and charge my laptop with just one cable. In fact, when you hook up the 14-inch MacBook Pro to that Studio Display, it really does feel like you are just using like a desktop computer, and it really does feel like having the best of both worlds. Now, let me answer the final question for you. Should you still get this 14-inch MacBook Pro? Well, yes, I actually think you should. I think it's still worth it 1 year after buying, even at full price. It has aged beautifully. The hardware, the performance, the durability, when you combine that all together, I think this is probably maybe the best laptop that Apple has ever built. It is really, really good. And while I'm sure you could potentially apply what I'm saying to future iterations of this M2 MacBook Pro if you want to wait for that when it comes out, but if you're watching before that, there's a good chance that you can find this laptop actually on sale right now. I've seen the M1 Pro version of this 14-inch model go for as low as like $1,599. Now that may sacrifice some performance compared to my M1 Max model, but it's at a way lower price point, and you do get some benefits too. It's not just about, oh, it's gonna be a better laptop in every way. Like I said before, the M1 Pro version of this laptop does get better battery life. So yes, the 14-inch MacBook Pro, 1 year later, might end up being one of my favorite Macs of all time, and I think it is well worth still getting. This thing is still just the best laptop. It is really good. All right, everyone, I hope this longer-term review of the 14-inch MacBook Pro helped you out. If it did, consider leaving me a like. If you want to see more from the channel, consider subscribing. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You made it all the way to the end. You deserve to be thanked for that, for getting through this slog. So thank you again, and I'll catch you in the next one.